All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all. And welcome. That's item 1 on the agenda. The part I know very well is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you please rise and join with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So far, so good. Okay. I have to read the notice of the appeals process, so bear with me. Appeal of decisions from the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission pursuant to the provisions of Section 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws. Notice is hereby given if you're not satisfied with the decision made by the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission. You may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the entry of the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission's decision. We advise that you seek your own independent legal advice to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Have they been distributed?
Minutes are circulated.
The minutes have been circulated. And do I hear a motion for approval?
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So approved. First item on the agenda is the records. I think 3 topics. Renewing the record company license request. Can you help me out with that, Mr. Fields?
The renewing record company requests were made. They're all in order. They do not require an appearance before the commission. They do require your approval.
Okay. And is there any outstanding reason not to approve?
These are all in order and are renewing companies within the code.
Okay, and so right now we're just working on the record company licenses, not the drivers or anything. Okay. Do I hear a motion on approval?
I move to approve the general record companies. Do I need to list these out by name?
Can we say addendum 1?
Yeah.
I move to approve the general record companies and addendum 1. There are 11 companies. Move to approve.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Approved. Second item under the records, which is addendum 2, which is the renewing record driver request for February. And is there any reason not to approve?
All but one, I'd like to pull him out of order. Number 11, Anthony Morton. There was an issue that came up I'm confident you'd want to hear.
Okay.
The others are all in order.
So we could remove number 11, Mr. Morton, from addendum 2. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to renew the permits to all 12 the 11 with the exception of Anthony Morton.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. What will be the course of action for Mr. Morton?
If you'd call Mr. Morton, I'm not sure he's present, but if he's present, he'll need to be heard.
Mr. Morton? Would you like us to defer to the end of the meeting or to the next meeting?
We could defer to the end of the meeting before.
Okay, we will defer that item until the end of the agenda. The next item is addendum 3, which is new record driver permit requests. These are new, not renewals. And there are 21 of those. And is there any reason that we would,
Yeah, there are no issues with any of them. They just require your approval.
and thank you. Do I hear a motion on the new record driver permit requests?
I make a motion to approve all new record driver permit requests on addendum 3.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We've taken care of that business. Item 6, on the taxi cabs. And I think that's, there we go.
You probably will not find anything in your addendum, or in your agenda, or in your packet, I should say.
Right.
When you approved the permits at a previous meeting in January, there was a conflict in colors. Quick Cab needs to have their color scheme approved by the commission.
Okay,
So they'll just make a presentation, and the staff we've looked at it, and we're fine, so it's
Okay.
up to y'all.
quick cab?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. We are going with that red and black lettering and white. And we will have a American flag coming out of the back, which is not there.
So American flag will be on the back of
On the back
the,
of the B, right
On
where
the-
it says cab, on that B, it'll
Okay.
work off.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it will, how far will it extend?
it will extend,
To the rim.
yeah, to the
Okay.
rim and to the,
To the,
back
to the
window.
back of the slide, okay, so it's back of the sliding
And that's
door.
it.
Okay. A wavy flag or a straight flag?
Yeah.
Wavy flag, yes.
Okay. All right.
We went with red because it's a bright color and it's not conflicting with any other company.
Okay, well, it's good not to have the conflict.
Yes.
Even though I think you get pulled over more for speeding, and
Right.
maybe that's,
I know.
but that's good, not that your drivers are gonna be speeding
We can
anyway.
equally snag the same amount of customers.
Okay.
We get tickets.
It'll be okay. Okay. Does anyone have questions regarding the color scheme for Quick Cab?
Well, just to ensure that it's fine with Mr. Fields, is it okay that the American flag is not on here?
As long as it's approved, I don't know of any reason that they could not use that.
Okay.
We will double check.
It was just something suggested to us by a graphic artist once we had approved what we were gonna submit to you, and it was just like last minute, like it would look nice. So that's why we wanted to go with the flag, and it didn't print on this.
I'm certain before they put it on, they'll double check the federal standards on the use of the American flag, just to be certain, but.
Yes.
I move for approval of this Quick Cab's color scheme.
I have a motion for Quick Cab's color scheme. Do I hear a second?
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I
Yes,
have
sir.
one question, if you don't mind. I've been noticing most all the cabs I see have phone numbers on them.
And we will have a phone number
We've
too.
got a phone number, we're just looking for something that's catchy versus,
Regular phone
1-800
numbers.
Quick Cab.
Okay, thank you.
No other identification. This, okay.
Website on the back.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the back of the cab.
Yes,
And a unique number.
yes, all the way around. Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion?
No.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you
Any
so much.
opposed?
Thank you so much.
So moved.
Mr. Morton has arrived.
Mr. Morton has arrived.
If you want to take it down, or if you want to move to the
What's the pleasure of the commission? Take it now, or?
Let's do it now.
Okay. Mr. Morton. Come on up. We have your request for record driver renewal permit. It was pulled from the addendum. And Mr. Fields, do you have background?
Mr. Morton appeared in 2011 to operate a wrecker. We provided this to you in your package. it was given to him on probation. He passed his probation with no problems. When he came in for renewal at this point, there had been a charge that you would see in, that would happen in, let's see, last July involving a weapons charge. It is unresolved at this moment, and again, he's not convicted, so he's probably eligible for it. Because it was involving a weapon, I felt like y'all needed to see it.
Okay.
It looks like Mr. Morton was on probation for a year from March 22, 2011, so.
I'm on probation for 2 years, but my permit lasted 2 years.
So you had a
Are we talking about the probation for
Probation
the permit or
for the
probation
permit.
for the permit?
1 year.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to hear what the circumstances were for the weapon.
Well, it was at my home, and the police knocked on the door, and my son let them in, and they came in and searched the house, and I had a shotgun up on my bed.
So it's possession of a weapon.
Mr. Morton, you were convicted of a felony before?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so you were charged with possession of a weapon as a convicted felon, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that's the pending charge right now?
Yes, sir.
All right. When's your next court date on that?
I don't have one now, right now. I don't have one right now.
Okay. I noticed on your application you put down that it occurred in 2012
Yes, sir.
and that it's pending.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't have no court date, though.
Was it bound over to the grand jury?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you're waiting to appear in criminal court?
Yes, sir.
All right. So you've been to General Sessions Court? and
Yeah,
then
I've
the
been to
case-
General Sessions Court, and
And then the case
bound.
bound over to the grand jury, and now you're waiting to appear in criminal court
Yes,
to
sir.
be arraigned. Now, also on here, it says there's a theft over 500. What's that about?
They said that the gun was stolen, but
Okay. So you're charged with 2 felonies, that is possession of a firearm as a convicted felon, and also theft over 500 because the firearm was allegedly stolen.
yes, sir.
All right, and
But I've been having this forever. That's one. It was a muzzle. It was like one little muzzle load of things. I ain't even know how to use it. It was just that.
okay, I'm confused. Was it a shotgun or a
That's what
muzzle?
it says. That's what they call the shotgun, but it's a muzzle loader,
Okay.
kind of type of thing. You put the pad off in it or something like that.
When was it bound over to the grand jury?
No, September.
Okay. So it ought to be coming out soon.
Yes.
And the underlying felony you had, all I see here, it says criminal simulation. Was it drugs?
DVD movies.
Sorry?
DVD movies.
And what was the felony about? What was the criminal offense about that?
It was like copyrighting, selling DVD movies.
All right. What's the word I'm looking for? Piracy of DVD, huh?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. And you pled guilty to that?
Yes, sir.
And that's what you had the 2 years probation for? Okay. And that was back in 2007? What was the probation violation that occurred on that case? I noticed that there was a probation violation. What was the violation for? Did you successfully complete probation?
Yeah, I've been on probation.
Okay.
Why did the police come to your house that day and knock on the door and,
They said I had traffic at my home.
I'm sorry?
I had traffic at my home because I guess because I towed cars there all the time.
So
That's what they
excessive
told me.
traffic or,
They said I had traffic at my home. I'm like, well, I towed cars back and forth. I had like 3 junk cars in the backyard.
Did they have a search warrant?
But I told them they could search, and I told them that it was back there.
Okay.
I said, it's back there in the closet. Yeah, I guess the radio and the little serial number thing and see what was going on.
and how long have you been in possession of the gun?
Oh, about 3 years.
And how did you obtain?
I bought it from a yard sale. I don't even think the thing worked. It's just like something you go hunting with or something. It's like a pad. You stick pad off in it. That's what they told me how you use it. Put the pad off inside of it, and then take like a little ball you put in it, You pull the thing out, you just stuff it down off in the hole and pack it.
So it's a muzzle loader?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can hurt nobody, man. By the time you do all that and do all that, you'll be there.
And just give us just a minute.
Okay.
When'd you come off probation?
When did I come off probation?
Yeah.
09.
09? Okay.
So I got the criminal simulation in 07 and I had to do 2 years probation.
Mm-hmm.
I think I got off a little early, like early 08, almost 09. Something like that.
It's kind of important. Was it 08 or 09?
At the end of 08.
End of 08?
About November. Okay. Something like that.
Thank you.
Mr. Fields, if he's found guilty of a felon in possession, that itself is a felony?
Yeah, if he were convicted of the felony, that would prohibit him from, in this particular case, it would prohibit him from being able to operate a record, is my understanding.
By the rules of the commission?
By the ordinance.
Yep, right there. Do we have other questions?
Are you currently operating a record?
Yeah, I got a temporary that's over today.
Okay.
A temporary, like little orange thing.
Are you with a company?
No.
It's his own company.
It's on my own.
That's okay. Yeah, thank you. So he's representing.
Any other questions?
But we don't know when a court date is going to happen.
I don't know what court date. That's the only thing. I've been worried about it myself. But I could report back to y'all and let y'all know when it was, when it comes up. I'm pretty sure y'all would know though, right? Or I can report back to.
We've not had any operating complaints or that none have come to us.
And there's a fee involved for renewal? Is there a fee
Yes,
involved for renewal?
he was already paid the fees and would be ready for renewal.
Is it possible to do a temporary until we find out what the court date is? Do you have standard time frames on your temporaries?
We could do a continuing period of 30 days from tomorrow, then April 1st, and then reporting monthly to us to let us know what's going on. And just keep renewing it until we bring it back to y'all.
And he would
Or
report to you.
if he's not convicted, then staff would bring it back just as a matter of an addendum to the commission, as we did earlier with the others.
Go ahead.
Other questions for Mr. Fields? Okay, on the matter before us is the renewal of the record driver permit for Anthony Morton. Entertain a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we give him a 60-day temporary extension until we find out about the court date, because it's going to tell us one way or the other where we go from there.
Mm-hmm.
I have
I second that.
motion for 60-day temporary extension, and I have a second for that. Is there discussion?
I would point out that the first court date that he'll have in criminal court will be for an arraignment. And then most likely there'll be a discussion date set 30 days after that, and then a settlement date 30 days after that by the court's scheduling order.
Yes.
So in 60 days, all we may know at that point is just that he has
A court date coming up.
gone to court and has more court dates coming up. But we'll know, Mr. Morton will be able to tell us what the court scheduling order will be, which will give us an idea of when a decision will have to be made. So,
Okay.
and there's all kinds of outcomes that could occur in criminal court on this kind of case. So. The other question I had that was brought to my attention was, I'm not sure what section it starts with, but it's marked 3, application for record driver permit, subsection A. And it does set a time frame period of 5 years from basically a release date from probation, incarceration, or whatever. But if he's in 2008, it was released from probation 2008, that 5 years may or may not be over with.
So if it was early 08, it would be...
If it was real early 08, he's okay. So, and again, I'm just reading that today for the first time, and I would leave it up to the Commission's legal counsel to interpret it for me. But there does appear to be a waiting period of 5 years from being placed on probation, parole, pleading guilty, or released from incarceration.
Since you had an existing permit issued by the commission, that's the reason he brought it back, because, again, there were several things here that I thought y'all should look at. Since you had an existing permit, I was more concerned about denying taking something from him that he already had.
Appreciate your honesty.
I still stand by that motion on the floor.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Mr. Morton, you have a 60-day temporary extension.
All right, thank you.
Just keep us informed.
I will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving along to item 7 on the agenda related to horse-drawn carriages. And Mr. Fields, can you give us background?
Last year, several complaints came to the commission, and then cross complaints between drivers and companies, Hat Creek and Sugar Creek. Since then, as some of you that have been here through that time will know, that we continue to provide information and continue to try to deal with various issues as they came up. And at your November meeting, you agreed to allow me to meet with both sides, and I did, and there's not a resolution. And at the January meeting, I suggested that they should come back. These are not charges brought by the staff or the commission director. They're simply complaints that they have against one another, and all I knew to do was to let them present them to you for your consideration, so they would have an opportunity to publicly discuss the issues.
And so if we hear the complaints, we don't have any independent witnesses to any of the complaints?
Not from staff.
No staff, no law enforcement?
Not that I'm aware of.
No complaints brought by the public? Are we required to hear the discussion between the two parties?
I'm going to defer back over to legal counsel.
The rules actually provide for discipline at the driver permit level to be initially administered by the director, but because we didn't have like our own staff verification of the charges, it was not handled that way. Billy didn't feel like he was comfortable. He had enough to determine whether discipline was appropriate. That there are allegations that would amount to a violation of some of the code sections if you guys were to find that there was enough evidence to conclude that a violation occurred.
So we can hear it, but we're not required to.
You know, I mean, there have certainly been repeated requests to be on the agenda from the complainant and their counsel. And, you know, we've obviously handled that in the past by deferring it.
Okay.
It varies different
But
persons'
what staff is
requests.
basically telling us is nothing has been substantiated one way or the other.
Well, I mean, they have witnesses and documents, I believe, that they want to present to you all.
Okay.
So I'm not going to, I'm less aware than their counsel would be of what they have.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, excuse me, I'm Gary Blackburn, I represent.
Hang on just a second, okay? Can you give us just a quick background on the nature of the complaints of the parties?
Most of the nature of the complaints, for the most part, are complaints that have been observed and then shared with the staff from various drivers. There's some of them are, I think, more of a personal nature. Some of them are of leaving the carriage route.
U-turns, I know.
What would have amounted to U-turns? Not parking, not parking in the proper place. Kind of pushing and shoving, and I mean not physically, but not allowing other people to park in the carriage stands, things like that.
Adults acting like children. All right. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, you identified this dispute precisely. I'm Gary Blackburn, for the record. I represent Mr. Smith and Sugar Creek, and I have had the flu all week, so pardon my voice. I submitted and sent over to Mr. Fields this morning a set of formal objections. That was because I was concerned that I wouldn't be able to be here today, so I apologize for being overly formal for it. This is, for the reasons that I've stated here today, Sugar Creek is not going to present any of this, what in East Tennessee when I grew up was called yow-yowing. We're not going to present any of that today. The reason is we've prepared a lawsuit, and we're going to file that lawsuit. And because of the nature of this proceeding, one of the things that I believe a court will find is that this is an extrajudicial proceeding. I don't mean any insult by that. I just mean the term means that the testimony will not be privileged. And so we have a court reporter here today to take down some of these comments, which, if they are given as they've previously been given, could rise to the level of defamation. Defamation because it's televised rather than slander. Won't really make any difference because a new cause of action will accrue today. There are numerous problems with this, which I've outlined, and I don't want to belabor. I've raised issues before about certain procedures that if you have, I think the way this commission has conducted these matters over the years has been successful and it's been efficient. But when you're involved in threatening an interest in property, I think if you consult with these good lawyers who represent Metro, they'll inform the commission that when a property interest is threatened, there are certain higher procedural requirements, due process requirements. I don't think under these circumstances any of these can be met. The charges are a series of he said, she said allegations of what someone said and what someone didn't say. One of these individuals is a former employee of Mr. Smith, for example, who was terminated. It's the kinds of things that you would ordinarily associate candidly with a domestic relations lawsuit, which is an explanation as to why I don't do that work. Mr. Fields had a very good suggestion, and we adhered to it. We had a meeting in which I thought, and I believe my colleagues here thought, made substantial progress. And one of his proposals was to establish one or more additional cab stands, or not cab, but carriage stands. I recall 3, Mr. Fields recalls 2, it makes no difference. I'll defer to his memory on it. But if that were to happen, then there could be some insulation from this sort of ongoing sandpaper. That, of course, has to be presented to and approved by this commission. So in terms of preparing a document to try to make peace, we had to have that element because part of that would be using Mr. Fields' guidance, having that done in such a way that it didn't give an advantage or disadvantage to any party. We were willing to continue in that, and we still are. I've done this long enough to know that you ought to pick fights, not just engage in every one that you can find, and that's what our opponents are doing. They just want to fight it because they're upset. Well, this commission's not going to de-upset them. I think they're going to continue to be upset. I think they're especially going to be upset when the lawsuit's served. But as to this, it was my suggestion, for the reasons I stated, that this should not go forward as a hearing for all those reasons. But in addition to that, that I've suggested that that you simply ask these parties to mediate this, to get in a third party, a neutral, and that you require them to gather in one place on one day and try to resolve this. We can, if that has the possibility of success, then we can discuss with our client not filing the lawsuit yet. There are numerous issues, factual issues, to be discussed today, which I think you will find contradictory and confusing. And I think this is a waste of your time and your resources. We do not have a specific targeted complaint such as you would have if Mr. Fields and his staff presented it. You'll have a 2-page email filled with comments about what someone else told someone. That's the level of it. We have some affidavits which we have obtained for the purpose of the lawsuit and injunctive relief. Would those all be admissible in evidence? This type of thing. It is, as a friend of mine puts it, too much sugar, not enough sugar for the dime. There is not enough for you to accomplish today, given the fact that there's a reasonable alternative that will put everything in status quo and may resolve it entirely, and there's not a dependable outcome. If and I'm only speaking hypothetically, but if you were to find that one or more parties should be sanctioned, then how would we prepare this record? How would it be certified? It's done without testimony, under oath. What would be in the Chancery or Circuit Court then would be, instead of a resolution of these factual disputes, a direct and inevitable attack on the procedures of this commission. We don't need this. I think, except in extraordinary circumstances, your procedures are working fine. But it will put us, both sides, in a position, potentially, theoretically, to raise all of these issues in a trial-level court to no end. I'm not here to interfere with your work. On the contrary, I think I'm proposing a reasonable compromise, a way to avoid this, and one which, at least in November, I thought was the path we were on. We're still willing to stay on that path.
Thank you. That was Mr. Blackburn representing Mr. Smith and Sugar Creek.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Tyler Yarbrough, and along with Jason Gishner, we represent Sam Roberts and Hat Creek Carriages, who's the owner and operator of Hat Creek Carriages, some of the drivers from Hat Creek Carriages, and some of the drivers as well from Southern Comfort, who have had some complaints pending against them. I am not going to respond to everything that Mr. Blackburn just said.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Would you be willing to go the mediation route?
I will say that I do agree with Mr. Blackburn that our meeting with Mr. Fields was very productive in December. We do feel like we got a lot out of that. There are going to be some measures put in place that I think will alleviate some tensions. Having additional carriage stands, when it makes it that through the process, is going to be very good. We were, however, I will say, frustrated with what followed that conversation. And here we are, a full year after the very first complaint was filed or made, was sent to then Milton Bowling. at that time, back on February 23rd, was the first complaint, 2012 was the first complaint filed. These have been put off and put off and put off. We're at a point now where simply we want to be heard. And we are prepared to respond to any complaints against us, to present the complaints that we have previously submitted to the commission, and we want those to be heard today. And we're prepared to do that in any form or fashion that this board wishes.
A question for legal counsel. If there's a proposed filing of a lawsuit regarding the disagreements between the two parties, what would our role be today prior to that?
I have not actually seen the filings of which Mr. Blackburn speaks, so I'm not prepared to respond to any arguments that he makes in them. I don't think your role here is kind of as a licensing authority, and you have an administrative regulatory role. You do sit in a quasi-judicial capacity, and so and you have the power under the charter to hold hearings and conduct investigations, and even to compel witnesses and so forth if you need to. As far as all I know is what the complaints say, that basically the witnesses are prepared to testify that they are aware of alleged violations. It seemed to be the best way to proceed to just let everybody, present what they knew and let y'all make kind of a finding of fact determination. And I don't agree with Mr. Blackburn that there's a necessity for the witnesses to testify under oath. And the record of your proceedings would be the minutes of this court. So, and there are procedures for appealing from your decision, as you read at the beginning of the meeting. So, that, I'm not sure that answers your question, but that's my perception of it. I mean, I think you have a regulatory responsibility regardless of whether lawsuits are threatened, but without knowing more about the specifics of what is threatened, I can't really speak to it precisely.
Okay.
I have a question, though, but we are not necessarily compelled to act in any way, shape, or form, other than to hear the complaints. I mean, if there's nothing that we can bring out of this to go, here's, if let's just say, if we decide that it is something that should go to civil court and not be heard in this court, we can just say thank you for presenting it and move on.
Yeah, I mean, basically there are lists of prohibited conduct that drivers are not supposed to engage in. That's in Chapter 1254. And then also there are available, the discipline available for violations that can be administered under 1254 also is a suspension up to 30 days or revocation of driver's permit.
Right.
If a violation is found to have occurred.
Mr. Chairman, may I respond briefly? First of all, the lawsuit has not been filed. It's been prepared, but we had delayed filing it because there may be statements made by these people today that need to be included in it. Secondly, there is no, we do not contemplate having this commissioner of the metropolitan government involved in that lawsuit. We're not suing Metro. This is a dispute between two parties. And suppose, for example, you had a finding that resulted in some discipline in a hearing such as this, and suppose then you had a finding of a court contrary to that, then where would that put us procedurally? There's all sorts of mischief that can come out of this. And if it's only going to be done for the purpose of letting these people vent, it is an astonishing waste of your time. Now, we're here. We're not going to bother you with those that we raise because we're going to have those resolved in this building, but upstairs. That's what we're going to do. The procedural things I've raised, I think I have a duty to raise, and they are outlined in the written objections, which we would want part of the record, what I sent to Mr. Fields today. But Mr. Fields did a very good job at this meeting. All we were waiting was another piece to put into the agreement. Thereafter, basically the friction continued. And I think that's what council is talking about. Well, you know, it needs to be resolved one way or another. Having a written agreement in which they agree simply to stay away from one another is far more beneficial than having a lot of unpleasant, contradictory testimony offered today.
Thank you. For the personal benefit of the acting chair, I would request a 3 to 4 minute recess. I need to go to the bathroom.
Do we have copies?
We'll take about a 5-minute break.
Do we have copies of what was said?
Again. And thank you to those who have spoken on the horse-drawn carriage issue. I believe, given the comments earlier, at this point, we would ask Ms. Yarborough to briefly present allegations of any possible violations of the horse-drawn carriage regulations.
If I could just ask, as an initial matter, do you, are there particular complaints that you are aware of? I guess, well, let me back up and say, there have been numerous complaints filed. They are not listed on the agenda. And I'm happy to take them just in the order that seems to make sense, if that's appropriate for you, but I didn't know if there were particular complaints that you had before you that you were seeking proof on. We
have not had complaints other than those initiated by the carriage companies themselves. So again, we are looking at allegations of any possible violations.
I can maybe answer the question. The ones that have been noticed to Mr. Blackburn and his client were attached to Brian McQuestion's letter of July 5th, 2012 to Mr. Smith, and were several emails from Mr. Clark, Elizabeth Howe, I think, Russell Bassett, and Elizabeth Lucky.
Okay, thank you. That does answer my question.
Those were just the ones that were attached at the end of Mr. Smith's letter from Mr. McQuestion.
Okay, knowing that, thank you. I'd like to start first by calling Matthew Clark forward to elaborate on his complaints.
Mr. Chairman, excuse me, I thought what was being asked, could this gentleman remove his hat, show a little courtesy? I thought council was going to present an opening statement, so I would know how to respond. We don't have any...
Hold on just a second, and the good thing is here is we get to listen to what you say. Not everybody gets to listen to what they say. You said that you weren't interested in making a presentation today.
What I indicated, and my voice is failing me, sorry. What I was trying to indicate is, because we are going to file this lawsuit, assuming we can't have a reasonable and civil discussion, is that's where we're going to present those matters that were submitted by Mr. Throckmorton on behalf of Mr. Smith. So we're not going to bother with those today. I think it's a waste of time, and we have a forum in which to present those. But the problem here is, and the reason I was interested in an opening statement is that to the extent that a permit in which a party does business, under which he does business, is subject to revocation or suspension, that's a property interest. And so Mr. Smith is entitled to a specific notice of a specific allegation involving a specific ordinance violation. And we don't have those. We just have emails. And there would be contradictory testimony about those emails. And so that's what I was hoping, at least to some degree, I could get in an opening statement. What are we here to defend?
Mr. Commissioner, can we hear from legal counsel in response to that for a moment? Please.
Yes, I think that the violation that was identified in the letter I referenced previously of July 5th, 2012, were violations of 1254-200A.
Well, yes, but that claim has never been brought by the commission, you say. No staff has ever brought it.
Correct.
We just have a bunch of fellows coming down here to talk about it.
And I mean, if there is evidence, the commission is empowered to conduct investigations and hold hearings. So if they believe that their testimony of these witnesses constitutes evidence that proves a violation of that section, then, you know, they can so find.
Well, it's had that opportunity for 8-9 months, and it's not done that.
In part because
it's not Mr. Fields' problem. Mr. Fields tried to resolve this, and if these people had been reasonable, he would have. I'm here today meeting not any accusations by this commission. I'd be even more punctilious, believe it or not, if that were the case. I'm trying to get these folks to identify something cognizable in a court of law. Notice an opportunity to be heard, not some opinion expressed by a prior employee of the commission. We're only here on their complaints with no recommendations at all. Now, if they have something they want to point out, then point it out. Otherwise, he's just having a chat.
would it be helpful to read the code section in question?
No.
I think.
Respectfully.
The request of the chair. 1254-200A, a driver shall at all times act in a reasonable, prudent, and courteous manner, maintain a sanitary and well-groomed appearance, not permit a person other than another employee or the owner of the horse-drawn carriage service to operate the carriage under the driver's control, not permit a person on the back of a carriage horse when the horse is under the driver's control, not leave a horse untethered or unattended except when confined to a stable or other enclosure, not permit a horse to drop excrement from its diaper, keep all carriage stands clean and free of animal excrement, not permit the seating capacity rated for his or her carriage to be exceeded, travel only those routes designated for horse-drawn carriage travel, including special occasion travel routes as approved by the Traffic and Parking Commission, not operate a carriage while under the influence of intoxicating beverages or drugs, observe and obey all traffic laws and regulations of Metro and State, not permit a passenger to stand or ride on any part of the carriage other than the designated seating area while the carriage is in motion, and to advise the passengers that they must be seated except when loading or unloading, not drink or eat while carrying passengers or while the carriage is in motion, not permit the speed at which any horse-drawn carriage is driven to exceed a trot, and be responsible for the proper and humane care and treatment of each horse under their direct care and supervision.
Please continue.
If I could just note for the record, I think particularly at issue before this commission are those provisions under 12.54.200A1, that a driver shall at all times act in a reasonable, prudent, and courteous manner, and A11, that they must at all times observe and obey all traffic laws and regulations of Metro and State.
I think you're right. I think those were the subsections that were previously referenced to Mr. Blackburn.
And that the testimony of these witnesses would show violations of those particular code provisions.
Please proceed.
Could you state your name to the commission?
Matthew Clark.
Mr. Clark, who do you work for?
Hat Creek Carriage.
And what do you do?
Mr. Chairman, pardon me for interrupting. I must do this. We object to all statements that aren't under oath. I just
Duly noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
What do you do for a living?
What do I do for a living? I'm a pharmaceutical rep.
Okay. Do you do something else for a living as a part of your job with Hat Creek Carriages?
I drive a carriage.
Okay. How often do you do that?
Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
How long have you been doing that kind of work?
Be 3 years, the middle of March.
Have you always worked for Hat Creek Carriages?
Yes, ma'am.
In February of last year, you made a complaint by way of email to the Transportation Licensing Commission Director.
Yes.
Do you recall the substance of that complaint?
Yes.
Could you tell the board a little bit about that?
On that date, it was on a Saturday. We met at the yard at 12 o'clock. I was on the street by 1 o'clock. Pulled up at the corner of Broadway and 2nd in front of Cotton Eye Joe's. There were a group of people standing up against the wall. Unbeknownst to me, Johnny Smith was in the middle of them. As I do with everyone else, I asked them if they would like to go for a carriage ride. Mr. Smith stepped out and said if I knew what was best for me, that I would not ask his clients for a carriage ride. And then as people were coming up and down the street, at the top of his voice, he told those people that are standing there and also on the street not to ride with me that I was a convicted child molester. And that is absolutely, to me, the most offensive thing. And I resent, and I will not be called that. I will not be bullied. I will not be harassed. And I don't care who it is, Mr. Blackburn included, if someone calls you that on the streets of Nashville when you're trying to solicit a carriage ride, is absolutely hideous.
Is that something that you would think qualifies as courteous behavior required of horse carriage operators?
No, ma'am, that is not courteous behavior.
Did this occur in front of patrons?
Yes. Patrons, tourists, people on the street, right between 2nd and 3rd Avenue.
Any of your coworkers?
Not my coworkers, but from another carriage company, yes.
Who was that?
Elizabeth Howe works for Southern Comfort. She was in the horse and carriage right in front of me.
Do you recall what time of day this occurred?
Oh, it had probably been between 1 and 1:15.
On a Saturday? Is
On
that
a Saturday,
what you said?
yes.
You made an additional complaint later in August of 2012.
Just for the purposes of the brief part, I don't think it was relevant for us to hear what time of day it occurred unless the time of day was specifically related to a violation.
Sure.
So if we could
move it along.
Move it along.
Okay.
Thank you.
You made a complaint in August of 2012 with respect to a traffic violation, is that correct?
Yes.
Do you recall what that was about?
Yes.
Could you tell the commission about that?
I was in line. I was right in front of Mike's Ice Cream. They're notorious for not wanting to be in line like everyone else. They want to pull up beside you and then try to cut in line. And it was my turn to pull up, and I pulled up, and Mr. Smith actually backed his horse from Broadway and 3rd in front of FedEx all the way past me onto oncoming traffic and wound up at the very back of the line in front of Cotton Eye Joe's at the corner of Broadway and 2nd. On oncoming traffic, that if they were to hit him, he would have come into me, my carriage, and my horse.
Did you take a photograph of that?
Yes, I did.
Is this the photograph that you took?
That's it.
This photograph has
They have
been
that.
previously provided to the commission and to Mr. Blackburn. And this photograph depicts the incident that you just described.
That's correct.
And it's your understanding that that is a violation of a traffic law limiting going in reverse on a busy street.
going in reverse on a busy street, especially in a horse and carriage.
There was an additional complaint that you sent in September. Again, going to a violation of 200A1 with respect to drivers acting at all times in courteous manners. This is about something that happened in August, on August 25th. Do you recall that?
Yes.
What was that?
That was on a Saturday. They were having some event downtown. I can't remember what the event was, but we were parked right in front of Merchant's Restaurant. Two elderly people from Oregon, along with their son who was from Atlanta, asked that they could not make it up the hill to go to Union Station. Would like to know if I would carry them to Union Station. And I said, yes, I would carry them to Union Station. I believe that weekend we were the only carriage company that was working down there. Mr. Smith, as I was going up Broadway, Mr. Smith pulled up in his truck and trailer and proceeded to give me and my patrons in the carriage the finger. Absolutely flabbergasted people from out of town why something like that would happen. I'm used to me getting the finger by him, but to my patrons, that's...
So that happened while you were operating the carriage?
That's why I was operating, yes.
Were there any other individuals around at that time?
No.
That's the proof that I would present for Mr. Clark, unless any of you have questions.
Any questions? Thank you.
I have some questions.
Mr. Blackburn, you indicated earlier that you didn't see any need to do this.
No, I didn't say that. I said I didn't have any desire to present our complaints of a similar nature, ongoing nature, but that doesn't mean that I don't wish to cross-examine this person who has not told you the truth, although he wasn't under oath. So I think I am minimal due process entitled to cross-examine.
If you want to continue the process,
I would be very, very brief. I think I understand what you're saying. There are some things that need to be called to your attention. This trip you had to Union Station?
Yes.
That's off route, isn't it?
That is correct.
All right, so that would be a violation that you and your friends have had Mr. Smith charged with in the past, going out of route.
By carrying an out-of-town elderly tourist who cannot physically walk up the hill. Yes, that is out of route, but I will do that every single day.
All right, so you, no matter what the rules of this commission are, if you think it's morally justified, you'll just violate them immediately.
Yes, I will carry an elderly couple up the hill to Union Station that cannot physically walk.
Am I elderly enough for you to carry me up there?
I don't know how old you are, sir.
We won't go there. You indicated that you sent an email, I think, or at least it was stated you sent an email to Mr. Bowling.
Yes.
And it's about the very incident you just discussed.
Yes.
All right. And you told us today that this incident happened between 1 and 1:15.
Approximately, yes.
Now, how did you note that at this distance of time? It's been over a year. Did you make a note of that?
We start work at the exact same time every single Saturday, unless the temperature is too hot.
Okay, so this is not a recollection. You're just putting this back together from your usual customs and procedures.
That's correct.
Okay. But you did say that you reported this on February 23rd?
I'll have to look back in the email in my telephone to what day I reported it on.
Well, your email is dated February 23.
Okay.
See that? Are we together on that? At 6:09 p.m., 6:09:50 p.m. That's when you sent this to Mr. Bowling, right?
If you say so. If it's on the email, that's the time that it was sent.
Okay. That's kind of interesting because the event that you're reporting happened on the 25th. See that? Saturday, February 25th? You know what you said?
It happened on a Saturday, so.
Uh-huh.
And your email, this date is not for recollection, it's your email date.
So the 25th was probably on what day?
2 days after you said it
Yeah, but it's
occurred.
probably on a Sunday, which this happened on a Saturday, so.
Well, I think you'll find the 25th is on a Saturday, but the 23rd is not.
Okay.
Okay?
It happened on a Saturday.
And so you're reporting on the 23rd something that happened on the 25th. Are we together so far?
It happened on a Saturday in February.
Okay. And then in this time period, very close in time, in fact, so close it's 2 days before it occurred, you said that this happened at 12:30 p.m.
Okay.
All right? Do you think that's accurate?
From 12:30 to 1:15, somewhere in that time, yes.
Well, now it's a 45-minute window.
I cannot be exact to the very second that it happened.
Well, would you be surprised to know that there are photographs of that day? Here's one timed on the 25th at 12:39. Do you recognize Mr. Smith?
You pointing to this one?
Yes, sir.
May I touch it?
You may, Senator. I warn you, I have a clue.
I've had my shot. I can't tell if that's Mr. Smith or not.
Well, I bet you can recognize yourself, though,
Yes.
can't you?
Yes.
Yeah. That's at 12:39, right?
I don't know if that date is correct on that camera or not, but
Well, I'll give you that, but let's assume for the sake of discussion that what is on the legend of this camera is accurate.
to be hypothetical that we're talking 2/25/12 at 12:39.
Well, the 25th is the day you said on the 23rd this happened.
It happened on a Saturday
Right.
in that week, yes.
And this picture says 12:39, and you said it happened at 12:30, but there's Mr. Smith on the carriage.
I don't know who that is right there.
Well, you know who this is.
Yes, that
So
would be
you're on
me.
the carriage.
Yes, that would be the black horse Toby.
Okay, so you're not mingling with potential customers trying to get them to ride your carriage rather than Mr. Smith at that time?
At that very spot is not where the incident occurred, but go
It
ahead.
really doesn't matter, does it, if you reported it 2 days before it occurred?
I reported it on a Sunday. It happened on a Saturday.
You reported on a Sunday?
Yes.
That would have been the 26th. That's all.
Forgive me if I'm stating the obvious. Is there any way for you to remember a year afterwards the exact time that something occurred?
Not 365 days, no.
And the notion that you sent this email 2 days before it happened might imply that you're fabricating this story. Are you making this up, that this happened?
I'm not making up being called a child molester on the streets of Nashville.
That's all I have.
Mr. Chairman, do you have the email? Thank you.
At this point, could I please call forward Russell Bassett?
I'll be right there.
And I will preface his presentation by saying that, again, we're addressing violations of 12.54.200A1 with Mr. Bassett's testimony.
Call me Russell. Call me Russell.
Call you Russell.
Russell Bassett. I drive for Southern Comfort Carriages. Where do we go from here?
How long have you been driving for Southern Comfort?
Since August 7th of 2011.
Okay.
Would you like to check that, Mr. Blackburn?
You're going to have an opportunity to have a lot of things checked.
Oh, I have a lot of things to say to you, too. Did you get that? You ready?
Yes.
May I start off with, so you get this? Mr. Smith is a prevaricated...
Wait. Stick with what you previously filed your complaint about, okay?
All right. Mr. Smith has threatened my life on Broadway repeatedly, and I will give you the exact words. You don't know who you're messing with. You're digging your own grave. You're a dead man. Correct. So at that point, I just moved on. The next day, I'm sitting on my carriage in traffic. Johnny Smith drives down Broadway with his finger out the car window, and excuse my language, but I'm quoting, "Hey, pointing at me. He then does a U-turn around Riverfront, comes up, "Hey, stupid," and repeatedly following me, harassing me. He has a smirk, a snort, a funny-looking face, anything to provoke. These are my complaints, and said it's a lot of he said, she said, and if we fellas were more reasonable, we're very reasonable. Actually, every carriage driver gets along with every other carriage driver, with the exception of Sugar Creek, who is commanded not to speak to us, as they've told us. Please ask me any questions you want.
Ms. Yarborough?
I have one question for you.
Yes.
In your complaint, you admitted to going off route on one occasion.
Yes, because after he threatened my life, I had taken to parking in an incorrect carriage stand at the corner of 2nd and Commerce to avoid any potential conflict with Mr. Smith, who rarely sees me down there other than when he is floating around, taking pictures of me, having dinner at an outside patio where he can sit there with his camera, make his faces, his gestures, his quirks, his jerks. I will gladly say, for the court record, Mr. Smith is a prevaricating provocateur. I will testify to that. Is that fancy enough for you?
That's good for me.
Yeah. Well, we're not all esoteric elitists. Do you have any questions? I mean, we've waited for a year to do this. He's just happy when everyone else is miserable. I heard you say that one of the... Go ahead.
Hold on. Does this relate to a violation?
Yes, it does. All right. So, needless to say, I'm unable to perform my job while he is on the street harassing my passengers, myself. He sends people up to intimidate us, ask prices, take our pictures, and therefore I have gone off route to avoid confrontation and conflict.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Sounds like you don't get along with Mr. Smith.
I got along with him fine,
Yeah.
to a point.
Yeah, to the point where he fired you?
He did not fire me, sir, and I will go to court with you on that one. Every carriage driver here knew the day before I quit that I was quitting. I sent Brian McChristian an email the morning before I notified them that I was quitting.
Are you under the influence of something?
No, I am not, other than emotional anger. Are you? You have the flu. Have you been taking cold medicine?
Yes, I have.
I have taken none. Go ahead with your implications.
Time out here, children. Let's do the questions and answer routine. Any other comments like that? We'll just go ahead and wrap it up.
Thank you. You did used to work for Mr.
I was a contract employee.
Did he accuse you of something?
He accused me of buying his wife alcohol repeatedly.
Did he accuse you of theft?
No, sir, he did not. I never stole from him or anyone else. He may have told other people that I stole, but he never directly accused me of it.
He accused you of taking a carriage ride, taking the money for it, and not giving it to the employer?
Absolutely not. It would never happen, never done. Did he accuse me of it?
I'm asking.
No, I asked you. I gave you my answer.
Right. Your answer is you deny that that ever happened.
I never stole any money from him. He never directly asked me if I stole any money.
He didn't directly ask you?
He did not ask me. He did not indirectly ask me. This is the first I'm hearing of it. Although he had told me that every other person that ever worked for him stole from him. I have seen Mr. Smith steal, if you want to keep going in that direction.
And you left of your own volition. You left and went to work where?
Southern Comfort Carriages.
Straight to Southern Comfort.
There was a day between.
Yeah. Okay. And And you do admit, don't you, though, I think I heard you say this correctly, that you have very often driven off route?
It's on the record, isn't it?
Is that a yes?
Well, you heard me say it.
All right, I'm going to take that as a
Hey, would
yes.
you ask your question again directly?
Have you, on more than one occasion, driven off route?
What is the route?
I warned the commission. I want to say that. Have you ever been charged through the prior administration of Mr. McQuiston?
I have never been charged with anything.
Of driving off route?
I have never been charged with anything.
So that would include driving off route. Thank you.
Go ahead.
If there's anything else from the commission, Mr. Bass?
No, thank you.
If I could, I'm not sure what complaint filed by Elizabeth Lucky is before the board, if it's possible for me to.
You can have all of them if you want. That's all it is. Yours too. Here's Elizabeth
This next witness will be fairly brief. It again goes to violations of the same code provision of 12.54.200A1. Could you state your name, please?
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Lucky, and I work for Hat Creek Carriage.
How long have you worked for Hat Creek?
About 2 years now.
Did you work for another company before that?
I have worked for Sugar Creek Carriage. So I just, go ahead.
You essentially can offer similar testimony about incidents you have seen of discourteous behavior, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you just give a brief outline to the
I just want to say that there is a direct correlation between when Mr. Smith works and there being instances of, you know, disagreement downtown, and there's just been several instances I've witnessed of him bullying other carriage drivers, and I just want to say that I believe he comes down with a premeditated desire to kind of bully and get a rise out of everyone, and it seems that even I started off working for Mr. Smith.
Time out again. Does this relate to a specific violation?
Just,
I would submit that this is before the board under the similar violation of, A1, 200A1, regarding reasonable, prudent, and courteous behavior. Of course.
So is there a specific?
There's not a specific instance. I just hear, and I've been down there for a couple of years now, about 5 days a week. And it seems like every time Johnny comes down, there is some kind of incident, you know. And I'm down there a lot of days when he's not down there, and it's as peaceful as it can be.
What specifically have you seen?
Lewd gestures. I hear remarks.
Have you ever?
He stands on the sidewalk right there at the carriage stand.
Has Mr. Smith ever done anything rude or discourteous to you directly?
No, sir. I just keep to myself. I really do. I'm good at not. I do not like any drama. I'm there to drive a carriage, you know, and I just try to keep a low profile. To tell you the truth, I avoid eye contact with him completely.
Thank you.
Other questions, Ms. Lane?
Very briefly, you're talking about generalities. You're talking about I've seen, I've heard, but you're not going to share with us a single date or time? or place, is that right?
I'll tell you something that would kind of back up my...
May I ask you to respond to my question,
Yes.
please, ma'am? Are you going to share with us a specific time, date, or place?
The day after, when I was working for Johnny Smith, the day after we went to court, as soon as we got out of this room and he had gotten suspended, he said, as soon as I get back out there, I'm going to raise hell. And would you believe he has ever since? And since that time, I went to work for somebody else, somebody who's a lot more respectable.
Ma'am, is that a no?
Sorry, what was the question?
The question was, you're not prepared to give us a single time, date, or place.
I'm not good at remembering dates and times.
Okay.
So no specific allegation at this point?
No, sir. I'm just a witness, general.
And I think you have, well, I believe you've already told them this. You've not experienced any personal threats or this sort of behavior yourself.
I avoid eye contact with him completely.
Okay. In particular, you didn't mean to suggest in your emails that you had witnessed this alleged occurrence on the 25th of February.
What happened on that date?
Nothing. It was reported 2 days earlier. So, but you weren't there on the 25th. You didn't witness any of the things that have been alleged.
I may have been there, but this has been going on so long, I can't recall.
Can I ask one quick question? I wasn't here in the commission of this incident you're talking about, where Mr. Smith was here. I guess there was a hearing. Were you here present for that?
I was.
Okay. When was that?
I want to say it was like October of 2011.
Okay.
Around that time, he was suspended at some point for like, I believe it was 3 months.
Was it in this room here?
Yes.
All right. Where did this statement that...
When we were walking out the front door.
Let me finish, please, okay?
Sorry.
Where was this statement said? And you just told me out as you're walking out the front door of this room?
Out the front door of the building.
Okay.
Actually, it would be the back door.
Just for my own edification again, exactly what was said?
It said that when we get back, we're going to raise hell.
And you were an employee of Mr. Smith?
I was an employee of his, but see, I'm a real peaceful person.
Did he say it to you?
He said it, yeah, and to tell you the truth, I don't know who was there. Probably his wife, Brenda.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
I'd like to ask a question. In your opinion, what is he trying to accomplish when he says this? Is it just the bullying, or is there something that does he want you to leave? Is he asking you to let him cut in line? I mean, what is he trying to accomplish when he does this, in your opinion?
To tell you the truth, I don't know. You know, I don't know why it just seems like he's a bullying everybody down there. I can't give you certain instances. There's just so many little things. And I'm sure, you know, y'all look at it and it's a he said, she said thing back and forth. And I guess, you know, there's not a whole lot y'all can do with that. But there is a major problem here with, you know, just, it's a very peaceful job and it doesn't need to be like this. You know, a lot of people feel very uncomfortable and it's,
A lot of people, you're talking about
other
other
carriage
employees
drivers.
or
other employees of
or
and
riders.
people on the street. I'm
Or
sure
riders.
people who witness this, you know, I'm sure it makes them feel uncomfortable. Tourists and you know, families and children. You know, we entertain the tourists, children, and families who come to visit Nashville. And you know, our priority is to show them around, give them a nice tour, make them appreciate and enjoy Nashville and recognize its beauty. You know, and it's a great way to tour the city, but
Other questions for this one? Thank you.
There's also a complaint before the commission filed by Elizabeth Howe. She was unavailable to be here today. She had work obligations that prevented her from coming. She was in touch with me. She was in touch with Mr. Roberts to say that she would have liked to have been here to express what is stated in her complaint, including having witnessed the first incident that Matthew Clark testified about. But like I said, she is unavailable and cannot be here today.
And Ms. Howell, tell us more about Ms. Howell.
Ms. Howell is
affiliated with which company?
That's what I need to verify.
Southern Comfort.
I believe she's with Southern Comfort.
That's what it sounds like.
Finally, Sam Roberts, who's the owner of Hat Creek Carriages, would like to be heard as to a specific allegation as well.
Thank you.
My name is Sam Roberts. I own Hat Creek Carriage Tours. I must say that I appreciate you giving us this time to say our piece. It's been long enough. We do have several problems with Mr. Smith down there and his behavior. It even goes to the point of danger. I drive occasionally myself, and I've been down there driving, and I've several times where I would take off with passengers in my carriage, and Mr. Smith would get a ride, and he would trot the horse in order to catch up with me. Because what he would do is he would go around me and come over on my horse with the back of his carriage, which would make me have to stop or get over, which is very dangerous. First of all, the horse could hang his foot or his leg into the back wheel and break it. It could cause the horse to spook. It's endangering passengers on the vehicle, not only mine, but his. I've actually had people to say to me, "What's this guy doing?" Well, he's acting normal, because that's his normal procedure. Other incidents that he does is, it is procedure that when we're at the carriage stand, each carriage will move forward as a space becomes available. Mr. Smith will not. He will stay at the very end, and he'll let carriages build up all the way into 2nd Avenue, into traffic, while you've got oncoming traffic from 2nd Avenue going south, going around these carriages. Now you say, well, why don't you go around it? Because when you do that, it's not policy or procedure. And you take the chance on coming over on his horse with people on the sidewalk, and if that horse ever bounces on that sidewalk, he's going to hurt somebody. That's endangering people's lives. I don't care how you look at it. Safety should be the main issue down there on that street. It's not right now, folks. And it's getting worse. And Mr. Smith is seeing that it's getting worse. Thank you.
I take it, sir, that you don't have any direct evidence of any of the things that the commissioners are discussing. Is that correct?
What are they discussing?
I have no idea.
Well, how would I know?
I agree. Have you ever had a gun on a carriage?
I have.
You have?
I carry a weapon. I'm a retired Metro police officer.
So you carry weapons on carriages?
Well, I carry a gun on my person, sir. I've put a lot of people in jail and in prison. I don't plan on going anywhere without my weapon.
It's a concealed weapon?
It is.
All right. This Matthew Clark, who entertained us a moment ago, he's your employee?
He is.
Have you seen him on or aware that he's been on carriages intoxicated?
He has not.
You don't
Never.
know that? Oh, you don't, so you've seen him every time?
I'm always there. I bring the horses to the lot.
Yeah.
He never gets on the carriage unless I see him, because I bring the horses to the lot.
Do you operate these carriages yourself?
Sometimes I do. I'll drive occasionally.
Do you go off-route?
No, not unless it's just absolutely necessary. Sometimes certain circumstances can, it can. If
you ever been charged with it?
No, I haven't. If they're having something at Riverfront although we do have permission to do this by Ms. Marshall, the traffic department, you say go off route. If they're having a special event or something at Riverfront where they block off 2nd Avenue, we can go up 2nd Avenue, across Commerce, and back down 3rd. Now, you can say that's off route, but Ms. Marshall actually gave written permission that we can do that when Riverfront is shut down.
So
it extends our carriage tour so we can give the people their money's worth.
So far as you know, every time without exception you've been off route, it's been approved by traffic department?
I wouldn't say every time, no, because...
have you ever been charged with it, though?
No, I haven't.
Regardless.
I haven't.
But you know, Mr. Smith's been charged by these, when Mr. McQuiston was in charge here, several times with that very...
Well, I didn't charge Mr. Smith with it, and I'm not Mr. McQuiston.
Did you help provide information to Mr. McQuiston?
About
Mr. Smith?
His traffic violations? No, but I have talked to Mr. McQuiston several times about other incidences that occurred with Mr. Smith, just like I have talked to Mr. Fields.
This incident of October 2011, this suspension that this young lady spoke about.
Yes, sir.
Were you there? Do you remember that? What that it was about?
Well, he's been charged with so many things, and he's been suspended so many times.
Not so much since McQuiston's gone.
It's hard to determine which one it was.
Yeah, well, let me help you. Had to do with lights.
Sir?
Had to do with lights.
Had to do with lights.
Not being able to get back when the lights
started
dimming because of the battery.
You know, I'll agree. Sometimes you get busy, you don't pay attention, you pull out without your lights.
That happened to you?
It has. Sometimes you can, no. Although I have received a citation down there, okay? Mr. Bowler gave me a citation one time for being 2 minutes early, before 6 o'clock, yes.
Are we on a specific allegation at this point?
No.
So
I was trying to sit
my
down.
point, sir, is that I have received a citation for something that I should have done.
Any questions for Mr. Roberts?
I've got one. You're talking about endangerment of people, horses, carriages.
Yes.
Any complaints been made to Metro? By that I mean
Yes,
the
sir.
police
I
department.
made complaints to it when Mr. McQuiston was here, and I don't know where they went. They were supposed to have been on this.
To the police department, to Metro.
No, myself and a retired sergeant that I know, we did go one time and we talked to the commander at the Central Station to see if we could just at least get some little extra patrol there with walking patrol or even the motors. And he agreed, and for a while the motors stayed pretty close, and the walking people would come by and walk by, and it seemed to help a little bit, but then after a short period of time, it went right back to the way it was.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Other questions for Mr. Roberts? Thank you.
Thank you.
Those are the witnesses I was prepared to present. I've been informed that Paul Morrison of Southern Comfort, he's the owner of Southern Comfort Carriages, is here, would similarly like to be heard.
Does it relate to specific allegations before the commission?
I don't know the answer to that.
I think until we hear it, we should know.
Ms. Yarbrough, may I ask you, who do you represent?
I represent Sam Roberts and Hat Creek Carriages.
Okay.
There were drivers as well that at some point or another have had complaints filed against them by Sugar Creek Carriages. For both, those are drivers for both Hat Creek and Southern Comfort, and I represent those individual drivers.
Thank you.
But you don't represent?
I represent some of the drivers
But you don't
for Mr.
represent
Morrison's company.
the person you just mentioned?
No.
Okay.
Is Mr. Smith accusing any of the drivers or companies you represent of rude and discourteous behavior? Or is it mainly just traffic violation or route infractions?
I believe it would be a similar mix of complaints. There's one letter from Mr. Smith's lawyer from September of last year that lists complaints against Ms. Lucky, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Clark, Mr. Bassett, Southern Comfort driver Melody Robinson, and Hat Creek driver Lee Rader.
Did Mr. Smith's complaints only start after he hired an attorney and complaints were brought against him?
As far as I know, the only complaints that have been filed against these drivers were filed in one letter dated September 12th of 2012.
And the earliest complaints that we have against Mr. Smith, is there any dated in 2011 or early 2012?
Well, I know that obviously it's come before you today that there were issues addressed by this commission in late 2011 that were, I believe, brought by the staff member.
I'm just trying to figure this out because
Those
I don't.
were already resolved.
Right.
I guess I'm
but those have been
confused
resolved.
With the number of complaints we have against Mr. Smith for rude and discourteous behavior, I don't see this many drivers colluding together to accomplish this. So there has to be substance there, and it is a violation of the ordinance. And I'm just making a comment for my fellow commissioners.
In addressing the timeline, I would say that the first complaint was the email written by Mr. Clark on February 23rd. There were subsequent complaints filed by Mr. Bassett and Ms. Howe in June, August, and September of last year. The first complaints against the Hat Creek and Southern Comfort drivers were filed in a single letter on September 12th, 2012.
Okay. Thank you.
To address what Commissioner Patel was talking about, that's a letter written by Raymond Throckmorton?
Correct.
Okay. Was he representing Mr. Smith at that time?
He is, and I believe he still is.
Okay. So so it was a letter generated by the attorney for Mr. Smith.
As far as I know, that would be a question for them. We have the same letter, yes.
My observation shows that this was many months after the first complaint started happening against Mr. Smith. I'm just throwing that out there. I don't see collusion happening, so I'm not sure if we're going to deliberate this or how we need to proceed. But I thought I would make mention of it.
Do we have other questions for Ms. Yarborough at this point?
Thank you.
Mr. Blackburn, do you have anything to add at this point for yourself and or your client?
Mr. Chairman, there are almost endless counter complaints of the same type. Some of those were mentioned in Mr. Throckmorton's letter. That was done because Mr. Smith felt that he was being singled out. I'm not asking you to make any finding on that or to agree that it occurred, but he had that belief. These folks did all sorts of things that he's alleged over a period of several months. There are instances that have happened, including as recent as Valentine's Day, when one of these individuals that he's complaining about climbed up into his carriage and threatened him. Whether there is collusion here goes to some question of credibility of a witness. At some point, when you're trying to determine a fact, you have to look at the evidence before the panel. You have no evidence of collusion. You're drawing an inference starting with an obvious, how kindly can I say it? The first incident that you hear here is impossible if he tells the truth, okay? He cannot have, I'm stating the obvious, he cannot have observed on Saturday, the 25th, the things he reported on the 23rd. He then says, well, it's been a long time, I can't remember. Well, his computer has a memory. His computer says he sent the complaint on the 23rd. Now, let's assume that he is telling the truth when he says the date on the email is the date this happened. that is that he sent the report. And let's assume that the dates he insists, he said truthfully, happened on the 25th. Are there no inferences to be drawn from that? What inferences? You know, there's a Latin phrase, I won't repeat it, but it's false in part, false in all. I learned a long time ago, when a guy lies to you, you know what you need to know. You figured it all out. Now, what's happened here is that you have competition. You have intense competition. People who are thrust into close spaces together. That's why I wanted to make time for Mr. Fields to make whatever proposals on separating these carriage stands might be useful and might be approved by this commission to try to seek a peaceful resolution of this. But if we went on with this, and we will in this lawsuit, you would hear multiple instances of equal or greater significance. The questions that I ask, has one of these drivers been intoxicated on the carriage? There will be proof of that. You already got an admission about a carriage driver carrying a weapon. Now, I understand.
Can I interrupt you for just a moment?
Yes, sir.
That we're talking about specific allegations.
And
if those specific allegations have been brought to the commission by individuals that have already spoken, if you have something to say in response to those specific allegations, I think this would be the time to do that.
This is the point in a trial in which I would move for a directed verdict, and that's what I'm doing. That means that there is nothing here that conceivably establishes the proof of this by a preponderance of the evidence.
Thank you.
You know I have an opinion. Does Mr. Smith want to testify? Yeah.
Do you,
Mr. Smith, does he want to testify, say something?
do you want your client to speak to the commission?
May I speak in just a moment?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you said that we have to, he has the opportunity to present a defense.
I've documented
to testify or present any witnesses on
Can I have them all on probation and all officers, every single company, and I feel like.
We will, Mr. Chairman, but that's the only witness that we're going to call. State your name for whatever record we may have.
Johnny L. Smith. I own Sugar Creek Carriages.
Mr. Smith, how long have you been in this carriage business?
I started in 2000, approximately 14 years, going on 14 years.
When did you first start having chronic complaints against your behaviors and operating?
When Sammy Roberts come into the picture, mostly well, all the problems started in 2008 when Mr. Roberts of Hat Creek Carriages was arrested for threatening to kill 3 people of Sugar Creek employees. The following year, 2009, Mr. Morrison on Southern Comfort was arrested for chasing down a 19-year-old employee of Sugar Creek Carriages, and he got arrested for that too. That's when most of these problems started, and it's just sprung from there.
Why did you start taking pictures?
Because I felt like...
Let's hold just a moment. Again, we were talking about specific allegations against Mr. Smith.
We are.
And so I think the thing that the commission would be interested in hearing about would be a response to those specific allegations.
Well, I'd be glad to do that, Mr. Chairman, but I would point out that, and Mr. Patel's comments speak to this, credibility of a witness is an issue in every case, whether a person is telling the truth or not. There's some idea here that Mr. Smith didn't start making these complaints until he hired a lawyer to make them. And this somehow is just related to complaints related against him, and that this somehow is something from which inferences could be drawn. And so it is relevant to that testimony. Is it relevant to these specific complaints? There's some things that he will say that are.
Well, let's get to those.
Well, there's one thing that I must put on the record. One of these witnesses used to work for you and says you didn't fire him. Who was that?
That's Russell Bassett, and he is mistaken. I fired him, and he did steal from me.
Firing does not, it's not part of the specific allegations?
No, it goes to the credibility of the witness. And if he's not telling the truth.
If you want to address the specific allegations, we are more than happy to hear.
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, the credibility of a witness who testifies against Mr. Smith is directly relevant to everything he said.
Specific allegations. Specific allegations.
All right, I want to make sure this is established for the record. Is he being prohibited from testifying to falsehoods told by a witness in a case presented against him? Is that what's happening?
We're interested in specific allegations.
Is that a ruling that he cannot comment on prior testimony going to the truthfulness of a witness?
The chair doesn't make rulings.
So there's no one in this proceeding who can make rulings?
The chair doesn't make rulings on your discussions with yourself.
All right, I want to point the commission out to one of the specific complaints I made when I asked that this hearing, if that's what it is, not be held. And that is there's no one here to establish what's relevant evidence or admissible evidence. All right, we'll move on, Mr. Smith. Specifically, you have been charged by these fellows with having used obscene gestures. Did you do that?
That's a lie. I did not.
You've been charged with doing that on multiple occasions. Is that true or not?
It's a lie. They were lying. I did not do that.
How many carriage companies are there in competition with you?
Mostly, there's about 5 carriage companies, if I'm not mistaken. Mr. Field knows the accurate amount. But we're all in competition, but not like the 2, Southern Comfort and Hat Creek. They want to run me out of business.
You were said to have cut into line, so to speak, or not left enough space. I'm not sure I quite understood that testimony. Did you do that?
I won't pull forward past the light pole to block the alley because police officers told us they would start giving us tickets, and I've not cut in front of no one unless we've got a line of carriages and I'm out on the street and none of them will let me in. I will, if another carriage pulls out, pull in front to keep out of the flow of traffic, because the police will give us tickets for that also.
You have been charged repeatedly with these turning violations?
I've done U-turns, but I've been doing them for 14 years, and so is every single carriage company down here. There's no U-turn sign at the junction of Broadway and 2nd.
Now, I'm not sure I mentioned that to this witness because it got brought up, but it's not actually part of what I understand we're here to determine. So that's the only reason I brought it up. Let's just cut to the chase. All of these accusations against you that you are threatening and violent and so forth, are any of them true?
No, I'm the only carriage, well, out of us 3 that's here, Sugar Creek, Hat Creek, and Southern Comfort, I'm the one that's never been ticketed by a Metropolitan Police officer, and I've never been arrested. They have, not me.
Mr. Blackburn, there's some mention of photographs that he took. Do they show other companies' traffic violations, or what do they show?
We're not here for that.
They specifically rebut some of the evidence here, and there's a number of them. You were charged with, or accused of doing something on the 25th of February of last year. Can you tell us what those 2 photographs display?
These 2 photographs here display David Biddle. He's not here, but he works for, at that time he was working for Southern Comfort Carriage Company. Now he works for I think it's Capital, a different carriage company, but he's on 2nd Avenue going off route, and that's on 225 around 3:30. And then the other one is Hat Creek Carriage, and they're off route on 2nd Avenue. The lady's name,
Are we here for them going off route, or are we here
Monique Jett.
Let me just show you this. This is the one that I'd like to pass to the commission. You see the dates on those photographs?
This is, the dates are February 25th at 12:39 p.m.
Now, let me ask you first, who took this picture?
A driver of mine, Casey Gold.
Was it your camera?
Yes,
Was it calibrated correctly? Is that date, time, is that accurate?
absolutely.
All right, what is the top, and that's true of both pictures shown on this page?
Yes.
What does the top picture show, please, sir?
It shows on February 25th at 12:39 p.m. Matthew Clark is parked on the corner of 2nd Avenue and Broadway, which he's off route parked. And there's another picture of the same time and date, just a different view of that same parking procedure there.
And Mr. Chairman, Mr. Patel, the relevance of this to what we're doing now is that this is the very time when he was said to be in a crowd of customers acting out. The very time. Finally, it's been said that you didn't begin to complain about anything until the fall, once you had an attorney. Had you, over a period of time, complained to Mr. McQuiston?
I've turned in many complaints, formal complaints, written complaints, emails complaining about, other people going off route, all kinds of stuff, and nothing was ever said. I guess there's probably no record of it now. Someone told me that they've been thrown in the trash can, my written formal complaints.
Well,
and
Mr. Smith stated, just not to belabor it, but here's one which I'll pass to the commissioners. Sunday, April 15. Now, these charges related to February the 25th weren't made against you until June. Is that right?
Yes.
And I think the email traffic shows that. This is April 15 of 2012 to Mr. McQuiston from you. Hat Creek, Sam Roberts had his truck blocking carriage stand for about 25 minutes talking to Matthew Clark, and it's lucky while 2nd Avenue had carriages blocking it, which was something with capital, and the back end of Brenda's carriage, he was up front looking back at us, laughing at us, stuck in traffic, because in the traffic lane, because he had his truck parked there.
Yeah, and his truck was parked in front of the carriages, and there was even space in front of his truck. And while 2nd Avenue was basically blocked off with a line of carriages, and he stayed there and stayed forever, looking back, talking to Matthew, pointing his fingers and laughing at all the carriages, at us. But that's what happened.
Now, have you ever felt provoked by them to do something? Act out in
I
some way?
feel like they've tried their absolute. I've never been tested as much in my life to try to be provoked to do something.
Called names?
They've called me names. They flipped me off. I've got witness after witness to say this. They've done the last incident was Valentine's when Matthew Clark got off his carriage, went over to me, punched me in the chest, shook his finger at me, yelling at me. Police officers witnessed this. I've got 4 customers and a ranch and his testimony to this. I told him, get back on your carriage, stop harassing me, and shut your mouth. I told him 3 times. He come back at me 3 times, trying to provoke me. And I know what he was trying to provoke me before this hearing is what he was trying to do.
I have a question.
Yes,
I have
sir.
a question on that particular. If it was witnessed by police officers, why did you not file a complaint since you had the proper witnesses at that point in time?
Because it's contained in the lawsuit. It's a specific allegation in the lawsuit we're filing.
All right.
And I even asked if I could.
I'm just
And
asking.
My experience is if you have, that would have been a misdemeanor.
That's
And
fine.
they won't prosecute if you got a civil
It's fine. I'm just asking.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
You're welcome.
I have some questions, Mr. Smith.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Smith, did you just testify that a police officer witnessed Matthew Clark punching you in the chest?
Excuse me. You are?
I'm Jason Gishner. I'm one of the attorneys with Ms. Yarborough.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Did you just testify that police officers witnessed Matthew Clark punching you in the chest?
No, I didn't. I said customers witnessed that. I said the police officers were brought there.
Oh, I thought you said police officers witnessed it.
No, there was witnesses there.
Okay, was he arrested?
No, he wasn't.
Okay, did you attempt to have him arrested?
No, I didn't.
All right. I take it your position is that all of these folks who have testified against you today, they're all lying.
Yes, they are, absolutely.
Did they tell the truth?
At one point in time, they are lying in their testimonies, yes.
What did they tell the truth about?
Well, I didn't really pay attention to what the truth might have came out of their mouth. I was more concerned with what their lies they were saying, so I really couldn't speak what they told the truth about. I'm sorry. I can't recall that.
Did any of them make any allegations against you that are true?
No.
Okay. Matthew Clark said that you called him a child molester. That was a lie?
Absolutely.
Okay. What about where he says that you flipped off the elderly couple he was driving up the hill? Did that happen?
No, it didn't.
All right.
My wife was right beside me, but he was off route on top of Union Station Hill.
Did you talk to him?
No.
Didn't say anything to him?
No.
Why do you remember him being there?
Because I took a picture of him because I had been given tickets for being off route.
Why did you take a picture of him?
I just told you, sir.
Because you wanted to use that as evidence to use against Matthew Clark at a proceeding?
That's the way I've been treated, yes, sir.
Okay. Well, what about Elizabeth Lucky, who characterized you as a bully? What do you say about that?
Well, she's got her right, her opinion. I don't say nothing about that.
Are you a bully?
No, sir, I'm not.
Do you think Elizabeth Lucky was lying when she got up here and talked to these folks?
I wouldn't go as far as to call her a liar about that. That may be her opinion of me, her way she perceives me, but I'm not.
Do you know why she has an opinion of you?
Not really. I'm not really worried about it either, sir.
Okay, so she's just wrong about that?
Yeah, she don't know me that well.
What about all the names that Russell Bassett said that you called him?
He's an absolute liar. He's an absolute liar.
Those were all lies?
Yes.
And when he says that you flipped him off, that's a lie?
Yes.
You've never done that? You've never flipped any of these people off?
No, I haven't.
Never?
No.
Okay. What about Sam Roberts that says you've pulled horses in front of his carriage? Have you ever done that before?
No, absolutely. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. That's a total lie there, and I would never endanger the safety. I'm real big on safety. That's no. Sammy Roberts outright right here with that one. Yeah.
Okay. So all of these other drivers from different companies who have come here today and have made these accusations against you, said that you're a bully, said that you're dangerous, they're all just lying against you?
Yes.
Why?
Well, because there's two. I told you why to start with my testimony. Because in 2008, Sammy Roberts was arrested for threatening to kill 3 of Sugar Creek Carriage's employees, and in 2009, owner of Southern Comfort, Paul Morrison, was arrested for chasing down a 19-year-old, and they want to put me out of business. That's the reason.
So your position is these drivers, these folks that, I don't know, make minimum wage to ride these carriages around, they have this agenda against you? That
Absolutely. They're on direction. Absolutely.
All these folks?
Yes, absolutely. They know. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So just so we are very clear, all 5 of these folks who've gotten up here and said these things against you, they were all lying about everything.
Yes.
But you're telling the truth about everything.
I am telling the truth.
Since the question was brought up and the door was opened, did you fire Mr. Bassett?
Yes, I did. He stole money from me for doing a wedding, and I also found a marijuana pipe in my truck that he was using. And I came to this hearing to help him get his permit because he had a record of being involved with marijuana, and I was the one that convinced the board to actually give him a permit when he first started in this business. But that's why he was fired, and he knew that too. I was in Pigeon Forge doing work up there, and I called him and told him that, and my wife heard me.
Last question, Mr. Smith. We've chosen, and I've advised the commission, that because of the lawsuit being filed and because of the legal position I've taken with regard to this matter today, that we're not bringing in all the witnesses about their behavior. How many do you have here if you were to do it?
I've got some here now, but I've probably got, I think 4 or 5 here now, and I think I've got another 6 but they're in different. They'd have to actually drive quite a distance to be here. But I do have more.
Thank you.
Commissioners have questions for Mr. Smith?
No, thank you.
Nothing? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I think that concludes the discussion we have, and I will summarize this best I can. We have allegations from Mr. Clark regarding behavior, and I don't recall the exact term there, but it's unprofessional conduct, and we can probably other terms. We have nothing direct from Ms. Lucky. We have Mr. Bassett again with professional conduct, and we have Mr. Roberts with, I believe, professional conduct and illegal operation of the carriage regarding the backup operation on Broadway.
I think that was Mr. Clark.
That was Mr. Clark on the backup operation
Going
too?
in reverse on Broadway.
Okay, thank you. Any other corrections to that? Any other corrections to that, Mr. Fields? No. So I think our choices are to act on the allegations, or
You can make a finding whether you believe the evidence supports a conclusion that any violations occurred, and then if you do, you can decide if any discipline is appropriate. I think what's provided for in 1254-180, I think it is either a suspension or a revocation. The suspension can be no longer than 30 days.
Okay.
What is our standard of proof? What level of proof are we required to operate under?
Administrative commissions and boards such as this commission have been held in appellate court decisions to have more than a scintilla of evidence for their findings, and they must not be arbitrary and capricious, so it's always good for you all to articulate a rationale for your decisions for the record.
Other questions for Ms. Gustonis? Okay, item 1. Well, is it best to take these in order then?
It's your preference.
Okay. The charges brought by allegations made by Mr. Clark. Any of the commissioners want to discuss those or feel that a violation has occurred?
I just want to say something. As a taxpayer, not a commissioner, but as a taxpayer and a member of the hospitality community, I know how many dollars are spent and how many hours and how much time it takes to get visitors to come to this city, in the hopes that we're going to give them a wonderful experience and to truly experience Southern hospitality. I am disgusted after hearing the testimony today from both sides. I'm disgusted that after spending this time, effort, money, that this is the type of experience that you want to give those visitors here. I'm embarrassed and I am humiliated. Just wanted to go on record as saying that.
I'd like to echo Ms. Marco's sentiments, and I'd like to say one more thing. I live downtown 7 days a week. And as Mr. Fields will attest, I have sent him emails on more than one occasion. When every single one of these companies in this room have broken codes or parts of the scenarios that we live under, and all of you, if I chose, because I'm probably a pretty good witness for that, could be suspended for an indefinite amount of time. So it would be my hope that you guys as business entities downtown, and there's very few of you because we have not allowed everybody in, could figure out a way to work this out so we don't have to sit here and try to make judgment on what one person says and what another person says. I think you guys have to be more grown up about this and quit fighting with each other. Because our job is not to make sure that you guys don't kill each other. Our job is to make sure you don't kill the tourists and the people that are using your services. And if that were the criteria, none of you would be in business right now based on what we're hearing. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Other comments?
I have some real quick. Yeah, I've listened to this, and I've heard people talk about how all carriage drivers go off route, all carriage drivers make U-turns, and they choose and do it whenever they deem it to be appropriate motive based upon their own individual opinions. If there's elderly couple that need to go somewhere uphill, I'm going to give them a ride, whether it's off route or not. People are choosing whether to obey the regulations and the rules or not, and it goes across the board from what I've heard so far. I've got to wonder what other rules and behaviors are going on out there. What other rules are being broken since individuals have decided that they get to make the rules based upon the circumstances that they see. I understand good motives, but good motives or bad motives are often camouflaged by good motives. And these rules and regulations are set and in place. And it looks to me like the carriage drivers are making their own rules and regulations despite what they're told to do down there. And that's what concerns me right now. It's out of control. I have a question. Do we have to deal with these on the individuals who brought the complaints, or can we look at it as two complaints, basically part number one about inappropriate, unreasonable, non-prudent behavior, and then traffic violations under subsection 11? Or do we have to go complaint by person by person? Because I was wondering if we're looking at the proof on each complaint, or are we looking at it based on the person who brought the complaint and we have to weigh the proof on that person's allegation?
I do have concern there because Mr. Blackburn representing Mr. Smith, they're withholding some testimony because they're awaiting a lawsuit. We don't have everything in front of us.
We have what the parties choose to put before us, though. And
right.
I've been in that position myself many times at trial, deciding whether the client testifies or not. Yeah.
I have no idea how that works. I'm just saying that we don't have it all. We're basing this on testimony. Please go forward.
It gives you the authority to suspend any particular horse-drawn carriage driver's permit issued under this article for any period up to 30 days. I guess because of the choice that you were just describing that Mr. Blackburn made not to present Mr. Smith's complaints against various other drivers with various other companies, that Mr. Smith's driver's permit and is the only Mr. Smith is the only holder of a driver's permit against whom allegations are being made today.
And are we talking about one carriage or all carriages, or do they own multiple carriages? Are they
I believe this
riding?
was noticed to Mr. Smith as just a driver's permit, individual personal driver's permit disciplinary proceeding. So while there are also disciplinary proceedings that can be directed against a license of a company, that is not what he was noticed with. He was noticed with this being an individual. Am I correct, Billy?
So it's an individual allegation regarding behavior and traffic violations.
Correct.
And can we take it behavior by itself and traffic violations by itself?
No, you can take it collectively, I think, if you find that violations have occurred.
Okay.
But with that, are we deliberating right now?
Yep.
Don't we have traffic violations with every company? Essentially.
Well, I think we probably have traffic violations with every company, as we've heard. The allegations at this point are specific traffic violations
for
Mr. Smith. Is that right, Ms. Costonis?
Chairman, I don't believe there was any traffic violation we were noticed about, or any individual charged with it.
It may have been there was Mr. Clark's testimony about backing against the direction of traffic, but.
Just because someone comes in here and brings something up doesn't make it a charge. And I appreciate it.
Well, we were told that it was number 1 and number 11 of the, we were given that of 1254200A, that it was number 1 and number 11.
Well,
one is act of reasonable courteousness, and the other is abusive traffic laws.
Those are the generic violations with which he might have been charged. We have no notice here of any specific charge or any specific date for which we have notice and opportunity to defend. So it cannot be considered. Now, I told you I'm under the weather today, so I'll defer to you. If I'm mistaken about that, tell me. I want to just be accurate. I don't recall that being part of this here.
I believe there's been various different pieces of correspondence, starting with Mr. McQuestion's letter of July 5, 2012, and then when this matter was deferred multiple times, sometimes at your request, I think we just sort of let the same charges continue to be.
Excuse me, I want to take your time seriously, but this is important to note for the record. We made the request because at the same time we had charges generated by these folks made in General Sessions Court. And so we were looking at having 2 hearings on the same subject matter, both involving a threatened deprivation of a property interest at the same time. That's why we asked for that postponement, so we could resolve that. We argued that the inspector had no authority to issue those citations. The inspector testified, admitted he was not an officer, and Metro dismissed those charges. We then argued that that was res judicata. It may or may not be. I'm not trying to revisit that, but that was the dispute. And when he received a suspension, it was for making a U-turn. And his suspension was for the last week of January of this year, and that's come and gone. And so that has already been addressed. Now, we respectfully disagreed with that for a lot of reasons, but Mr. Smith right now is physically unable to operate a carriage. He's on disability. He hopes that he'll recover at some point in the future, but he has not been operating a carriage. And so going through the time and expense of an appeal over something that had no real bearing on him at that juncture seemed appropriate. And then later, up into February, other things occurred, but not arising out of the actual operation of a carriage.
Now,
he also has the top rating the Better Business Bureau gives.
Some of those witnesses came forth and talked about him driving up in his vehicle. I know that there were several of them that said he came in his truck.
Right.
Right.
That's right. He transports things. But he has a physical disability that makes it very difficult, especially in the cold weather, to get in and out of the carriage. But we did not have specific notice of a traffic violation on a specific date that has not been previously discussed.
May I ask you, Mr. Blackburn, what he's doing, driving his truck to where the carriages are? Why is he there regularly with his truck?
Well, it's his business. Why wouldn't he be? I don't understand the question. Why would a businessman not be around it? The fact that he can't climb in and out of these carriages and do the physical things that are necessary dealing with that task.
So he follows his carriages with his truck?
I don't know that he follows his carriages with the truck. Some of these people who've testified have pulled up behind him in the carriage with their lights on high. That's happened. But I do not understand the remote relevance of this. Not even remote. Maybe you can discuss arbitrary and capricious that was discussed before.
I would say, I mean, it may not say this explicitly in that 200A section, but I think to the extent there were some allegations in a couple of the witnesses' testimonies, maybe about things that people did while they were driving their own personal vehicles as opposed to a horse and carriage, which is what the permit is for. I'm not sure that that would be within your regulatory jurisdiction. You know, I think that would be more a matter for the police. If you were driving a truck or another, you know, motorized vehicle, I think that would be more a matter for the police rather than for the Transportation Licensing Commission per se. It's their conduct as operators of horse-drawn carriages.
While they're on the carriage. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't. I don't know that it necessarily has to be on the carriage, but it has to be carriage related, I think, at least. I mean, it doesn't say that explicitly, but I think that's kind of the purpose of you regulating them.
The reason why I asked the question was someone said that he came in his car and he flipped the bird and yelled obscenities or whatever he was doing to guests who were on the carriage. And that's what I was.
I think he was supposed to have been in a carriage when I don't know. Y'all are the finders of fact. But the other thing I would say on the notice issue that Mr. Blackburn raised earlier, that there was also subsequent correspondence back and forth between Mr. Blackburn, Ms. Yarbrough, and Mr. Fields, where there was discussion about whether this matter would be placed back on the agenda for today. So.
No, respectfully, you're leaving out one of the elements. Those things that were discussed in the summer were all matters being brought by the staff. And then you have
there was both. That letter did include both matters brought by the staff, and it included these additional complaints, and we ended up bifurcating them because, you know, staff was prepared to present the matters that they had personal knowledge about, and as to the matters that Mr. Clark and Mr. Bassett and the other witnesses testified to, that the staff didn't feel comfortable prosecuting.
But we've not heard any testimony from any staff, nor any decision has been made for the staff to prosecute this.
No,
on either
that's
side.
Correct. The staff has no intention to prosecute either side of these.
And we are in a state of hopeless confusion as to notice and opportunity to be heard today, at least on the traffic issue. Now, I understand that he has noticed that he's been rude.
Mr. Blackburn, I think that you have received correspondence several times.
Well, we'll just have that determined somewhere else.
With that charge referenced.
Mr. Fields, do you have any input that would help us?
We have made a formal request to the Traffic and Parking Commission to take up the issue of additional carriage routes and carriage stands. At their March meeting, we will ask them to approve at least one new carriage stand, which is opposite of the existing stand on Broadway, would be on the south side of Broadway. We've also asked them to identify additional routes where carriage companies could be separated. My intention is to develop a plan, and we talked about this at our meeting in December, that the two companies would have to stay on alternating stands, where week 1 they would be on this one, week 2 they would be on this one, and then week 3 they're back on the first one. So they basically will rotate week to week from stand to stand. We've also have been in discussion with Traffic and Parking about an additional stand on Commerce. We used to have one there, so we've asked them to consider that as well. What we're basically trying to do is to alleviate the close proximity the carriages have with one another, as well as give the public additional routes and additional opportunities to see downtown Nashville.
When could we expect that these proposals might go into effect?
The Traffic and Parking Commission has the jurisdiction over the stands and those routes. My intention will be to present them to you for your acceptance at the March meeting, assuming that Traffic and Parking approves it at their March meeting as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fields. So in regards to the allegations before us, do we want to make a determination on whether a violation occurred and whether there's any appropriate disciplinary action? And we could do that in the form of a motion.
You could also choose to find no violation occurred and dismiss the matter.
That's correct. So I think at this point, we've not,
Could we dismiss it and let the courts handle it?
I mean, I don't know that we have any control over what the courts choose to hear. I mean, you can certainly decide that the evidence isn't sufficient for you to take disciplinary action, but that has to be kind of a your own finding.
Can I make one last observation?
Please.
All right, I was listening to the comments about this commission presides, for whatever lack of words, over people who are driving carriages and the carriage company.
Yeah, and I don't mean to say that they can't commit a violation unless they're actually seated on a carriage in that given moment. But I think it has to be relevant to the operation of the carriage.
Looking down my notes here, it would appear that Sam Roberts made a specific allegation that Mr. Smith was in his carriage and endangered the horses and the public. That was because he talked about endangerment there. The other ones, Mr. Clark dealt with Mr. Smith being in a crowd and saying the allegation was derogatory comments to Mr. Clark, offensive comments. But at that point, Mr. Smith is in a crowd of patrons and not in a carriage, is what I remember. Miss Lucky, it was while leaving this commission here. The allegation was made that it was while he was leaving here, going out the door. I would consider that far away from operating a carriage. And then Mr. Bassett's seemed to be general terroristic threatening, digging your own grave, shoot him, and various other derogatory comments that don't need to be repeated again. I didn't hear anything about those being while in a carriage, around a carriage, or around tourists of this community.
And kind of to follow up on that and on Mr. Patel's comments, I mean, obviously there are other laws that exist out there and that are enforced by, other entities and agencies such as the police. And, if you find that, 1254 wasn't violated, that doesn't mean that there aren't other things that would apply that might go more appropriately before a court. But, we have no control about whether those matters are prosecuted in those forums.
So I think we can narrow it down to if there's a violation of 1254, it would be the allegations by Mr. Roberts, and then whether Mr. Smith being in a group of patrons and saying those remarks violated 1254.
But along the lines of the group of patrons, Mr. Blackburn had a photo showing that I believe he was either on a carriage or not in with a group of people at that time on that day or the day in question.
That's what it appeared. If you can put faith in the date and the time on the...
Plus we have this outstanding email that was 2 days here, 2 days there.
If we find with all due respect, Ms. Blackburn, I don't have much concern about the email. It's sent from an iPhone, and I've many times put the wrong date on something in the content of a email when it clearly wasn't consistent with the date on the line there. And boy, if you're trying to make something up, that's sure a bad way of doing it because it's so self-effacing.
We agree on that.
So while I respect that a good cross-examination and inconsistencies within an internal document, I don't necessarily discredit what Mr. Clark has said in that email because of the dates there, but we do have the photograph to consider. So.
I'll say what I'm having a tough time with is that I have a strong belief that everybody is at fault somewhere in this, but how do we go about it? I like the way you were separating out with the sections, but it seems too large to condense. I mean, that's what's going on in my mind right now.
Well, there's a legal principle called clean hands. You don't come into court complaining about something unless your own hands are clean. So there's justification for what you're feeling down there.
I don't think we have enough evidence to rule against anyone. I wish somebody would, on a side note, I wish somebody, you may want to file a complaint for other things that are out of our jurisdiction and out of our hands, because if someone had threatened my life, I probably would do that, but I can't do anything about it here as a commissioner. I just don't think we have enough evidence.
Would that be in the form of a
motion?
A motion?
It needs to be.
I make a motion that based on lack of evidence, that we dismiss.
I second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carries. Item 8 on the agenda, which is other business.
I have just a couple of things I wanted to share with you. In the RPM report, you will recall there were certain things that were determined and suggested by the consultant. One of the issues that we had was the amount of liability and vehicle insurance protection. The Metropolitan Legal Department, through our insurance division, has recommended that the commission consider higher levels of insurance for taxi cabs. Specifically in the RPM report, it suggests that it should be 100, 300, and then it stops at that point, would be like 100, 350, or another 100. I'm certainly not an expert on insurance, but what I would suggest is if Metro, in my experience of 25 years with Metro government, when the legal department suggests we make a modification, it certainly needs to be considered. What I'd like to do is to bring the issues of liability insurance and car insurance for taxi cabs to you at the meeting, in a public meeting in March, and also consider the issue of uninsured motorists, as well as the grade level of insurance companies. One of the Metropolitan, again, through our insurance division, has determined that that we should only allow A- rated companies issue insurance policies, and this is all done as a part of the public safety.
Or better. Or better.
Or better. And again, it's within your authority to make the decision. At the present time, we have no rule that applies to the rating of the company, and the council has designated you the authority to establish the levels of insurance. And what we require is just the state minimum. And I know you've been in a long meeting, and this is very tedious. What I'd like to do, though, with your permission, is bring this to you at a public meeting in March.
Do you need us to do anything to place it on the agenda?
I do not. I just wanted to advise you of it to make sure there was no...
We look forward to seeing it in March.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's a great idea, especially with regards to the UM coverage and uninsured motorists, because it would not only
protect the cab driver, the driver, and the owners.
We will be meeting on March the 21st because of the following week was the Easter week, and I knew that was going to conflict potentially with people.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other business?
Mr. Muddy. He's retiring.
Oh, it's somebody's last day. I hope we went out with a bang.
Yes. I apologize. Buddy Lawhorn has been an inspector for taxi cabs since cars were invented by because of that, he probably knows more, and he reminds me on a regular basis, knows more about taxi cabs than I will ever know. And he's also said he will haunt me if I don't pay attention when he tells me something. So Buddy Lawhorn has been a very dedicated and loyal employee of the Transportation Licensing Commission since it was the Taxi Cab Record Board. He worked with Larry Ennis side by side in developing a lot of the procedures and the practices that we follow today. His last day is like in 30 minutes. And he's decided he wanted to retire. So, please applaud him. something that I am a little more used to, on behalf of the Mayor of Nashville, I would like to present a certificate of recognition to Walter L. Long for 33 years of dedicated service to Metro Government, Transportation Licensing Commission, and of late, Public Works. Because of your commitment to public safety and service, you have touched countless lives. Your leadership, your dedication are commended, and we wish you best wishes in your retirement. Signed by Carl Dean Mayor. Thank you.
Congratulations, buddy.
There's a lot of people in here in this room that are still in the back or whatever that I could tell stories on, but I won't. So it was, you know, it's always been interesting. As you know, you got the easy years. When I first started, one of the qualifications for being a cab driver was to be a convicted felon. I'm not kidding. Beatty can testify to that because he was there. I'm telling you, if you weren't a convicted felon, you couldn't drive a cab. It was just that simple. Of course, back then, that's the only people you could find to drive a cab. But they, you know, I appreciate it and thank you, and it's been fun.
You know, I've
but
got
one time. There was, wait a minute. If you needed, you didn't know this. We know the 9-cent thing.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
It's a lot.
Wait a minute. But if you needed 90,000, it'd been there.
Yes. There's no doubt. There's one thing that I want to make sure the mayor's presentation was made, but I have a presentation that you don't know is happening, and staff has reminded me of this. Thank you for letting me be a part of this gathering. Some history and sharing of personal reflections on our friend Buddy Lawhorn. He came on the scene as a driver, a dispatcher, a manager of the company that has always been my largest competitor. I think my earliest recollection in the late 1940s, Yellow had 80 cabs when Red Top Cab came on the street in the summer of '47. There were 4 companies and the drivers belonged to the Teamsters 327. They were Yellow, Checker, Red Top, and Bell Cab. I remember Mr. Oscar Jenkins as head of Yellow, 2 brothers, Frank and Ben Guy, who owned and managed Checker, Mr. Jimmy Wright, who was the president and owner of Red Top, and Mr. Claude Nichols, who owned and managed Bell Cab. There were other smaller neighborhood companies that have been phased in and out over the years, either quit, retired, sold, merged. Allen Cab, Jolly Cab, Deluxe Cab, Mercury Cab, Fuller Cab, United Cab, Yellow Cab, Madison Cab, and it goes on all the way to Safety Cab and Your Cab. Regulations by the city were decided and the Taxi Cab Licensing Board was established. The board members were appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the council. The first inspector had some cab experience and was very helpful in getting the companies acclimated in the goals of the board. I remember a very easy and friendly cooperation from the companies during my 59 years. The most helpful was the driver's permit, which included background checks for those who drove the cabs. Frank Reed, Ed Dawson, Jeep Edwards come to mind as the first inspectors, and we have good fortune that they saved the best one for last. Your friend and mine, Walter Long. This is signed by Dick Lecklider, Red Top Cab from 1947 to 1957, and Checker Cab from 1957 to 2006. He wanted you to have this today and let you know he's good.
Richard started in the taxi cab business the year I was born. That's how.
Well, Buddy, from grateful commissioners, present and past, thank you very much.
Okay.
You've been a great.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
You've been a great
appreciate it. And this is for Larry Ennis.
Yes.
Good. Thank you. All right. Oh, do we need one?
I think you did. Can
I make a motion to adjourn?
Please.
All right.
Second.
Second.
Aye.